On the television show The Facts of Life. It was just one of her many experiences that made her childhood anything but ordinary. Watch this.
Lisa Whelchel is known for her role as Blair on the hit 80s TV sitcom The Facts of Life. On the show, Lisa explored the joys and sorrows of friendship. But in real life, Lisa didn't feel like she had the same true connections. Through the years, Lisa learned how to develop the strong, close relationships she longed for. She shares this in her new book, Friendship for Grown-Ups.
Lisa, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
You write about being addicted to work. I think that's an addiction that's kind of new for us, even to think in those terms. Why were you, number one, and how did it sort of mess you up?
I think it probably started really, really young. I learned early on that to get approval and acceptance, to dance as fast as you can while smiling, and that just took different permutations. As in school, I was going to be a straight-A student, and then I got into acting. I was going to be the star in every play I ever auditioned for, and then got on the Mickey Mouse Club, and then from that point was working all during childhood. Then I left show business behind when I got married, and I had 3 kids 3 years in a row, but really just jumped into that.
Which is a lot of work, too.
It is. I jumped into that with that same kind of, I'm going to be the best wife and mother that ever was. So pastor's wife, homeschooling mother, and then started writing, wrote 16 books in 10 years. And so just
While you raised 3 kids?
While raising the 3 kids and
when
homeschooling
them. When did you sleep?
I've always been able to sleep, which is probably that's my other drug of choice. Well, either work really hard or sleep, which is probably not a good thing, the extremes.
All right, for your work drug of choice, the payoff was somehow you felt approved by everybody?
Yeah, I was earning acceptance and approval and worth and value, and so the harder I worked, the more that I could get people to, to like me. And
did you get that from your parents?
I think to some extent, I think.
Yeah, but you were still a child star, and so that meant you were apart from them.
Yes, but I think, the things that you internalize when you're young stay with you, whether they're right or wrong. I remember reading a book about paying attention to your first memories, because you're probably still living by whatever message you made out of that scenario. And my first memory was being in a nursery rhyme reciting class when I was 4. And the applause and the acceptance that I got after the recital. And just at that point, I think as a little 4-year-old, okay, so this is how you get acceptance and love.
The light went on.
That's right. And I think I've just been, doing that until the last 5 years.
Well, how did a work addiction affect your relationships with your family?
It really didn't affect my relationships with my family as much as any other relationships, because I really was also, especially with my children, I mean, that was part of my work, especially when I left show business behind. And so I worked really hard at having great relationships with them. But I didn't have room for many other relationships. For friends.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I first saw the title Friendship for Grown-Ups, and I'm going, well, I'm raising 3 kids, and who's got time for friends?
Nobody has time for friends. That's the point. We don't, unless you make time and unless you get intentional. And it's really hard because you can't measure the value of a relationship the way you can measure something that you've done. You can make money from it, or you've done it, you check it off the list, you've done it. You can say, hey, look at what I've done. And so you think that because you can measure the things you do, that it has more value. It's really hard to measure the importance of meeting somebody for coffee and just kind of talking about what's really, what's going on in your heart. That is exponentially more valuable to really connect at a heart level and be authentic and give and receive grace and be the body of Christ. But you think it's wasteful time, or you don't have time for that.
It's not productive time.
And it's not productive time, exactly.
But even though it is, because
even though it's more
restful.
Ultimately more productive to have great relationships, and Jesus showed that. He was more about relationships than being the good Christian, which is a whole nother addiction, just being the best Christian that ever was.
Which is impossible.
Yeah,
anyway,
we could try.
You've moved around a lot, and I know for me, every time I move, it's sort of like you have to rebuild a base of friends. And so how did you go around when the light went on? I need to have friendships. How did you start that process?
Very sputteringly, because I was in my 40s when I first really started realizing that I hadn't invested any time in outside relationships, so I didn't have any. So the first thing I did was stop working so much. I got out of book contracts. I stopped writing a blog. I stopped speaking so much, because you have to give time to what you want to see grow. So I had to stop working so much, and then just, going to lunch, making phone calls, just staying in contact by phone, putting as much energy into building a relationship as I had put energy into building my family, my work, whatever else.
You got disappointed too.
I did.
And you write about it, where you had a friend and you started talking about you and some really deep parts of you. I think her name's Lauren, and she...
That's what I call her in the
That's
book.
what you call her. All right. What was it like to take the first effort to say, okay, I'm going to reveal who I really am, what really happened to me, the deep, dark parts I don't talk about, and then find out, well, she's telling other people.
My first instinct was to put the wall back up, which I had let down, and being vulnerable enough to let somebody in. So the first instinct was, well, this isn't working. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. I knew better than to do this. I've known all my life. Why am I going to do that again? But I had experienced enough of the connection and what that felt like that it was more valuable to me than the fear of rejection. So I tried again. And even though my heart was broken a few times as I sputtered through friendships and learned things the hard way in my 40s about how to have friends and be a friend, my heart was broken, but it was broken open, and also the wall that was on the other side of it was broken down. So it was ultimately necessary, I think, to accomplish what I wanted, which was real heart connection. But that can't happen with the wall built around, and that needed to be broken, and it happened to be broken by some learning the hard way about some friendship.
Why is that heart connection so important to you?
Because I think that, you can talk to people from your head all day long, but you could feel the difference. And I think you can, it's kind of like Teflon, it just kind of slides right off, as opposed to Velcro, which really, it's holey and it's messy and it's got little lint balls, but there's real connection there.
Is it just a function of modern culture that we're isolating ourselves? And if so, how do we break through? How do we break through to the real?
Well, I think we have to be courageous and we have to be intentional, because otherwise it's not going to happen. It's too easy to just stay on the surface where it's safer, and it's easier to feel approval if you're playing a part. And so you have to be intentional about asking the deeper questions when you're in a conversation, and then you have to be courageous enough to bear your imperfection, because that's where the connection's going to happen.
You were courageous enough. You revealed it. Then you got hurt, and I imagine you went through I'm too old for this.
Yes.
And how did you get through that to say, no, this is really worth it?
Well, I did get scared, and so I finally made the decision to hire a friend, and that I found a counselor.
I've never heard of that one.
Where I could have, safe, intimate friendship for 45 minutes a week, except on holidays.
And I'll pay her to be confidential.
That's right, exactly. But it was actually really good, because it was in that safe environment that I could learn some interactive skills that I had missed by not going to junior high and high school, which is where I think you kind of pick up on that stuff earlier on than I did.
Did you ever pray about it?
I was not aware of my need. I wasn't aware of the lack of intimate relationship. I just, and part of that was because I didn't think I was supposed to need. I thought that I was supposed to only need God, and to need anyone else, you know, that was almost like an idolatry, you know. And so, and then also needing wasn't really a good option for me, because being on my own since I was young, I couldn't really depend on anybody but myself. I was kind of the central person in my life, that the mainstay. I had guardians, and then my mom was in Texas when I lived in California, but when I went back there, she was there, but I had my grandmother. But really, I couldn't depend on anybody but myself. And so I learned that it's not really an option to depend or to need. And I just kind of learned how to survive without that. I wasn't aware of the lack, so I didn't even know to pray for it.
Okay. All right, we're going to go over to Michelle on chat. We've got a live chat audience with us right now that's asking a question for you.
We have Dawn in the chat room, and Dawn is asking that the Lord would bring her a good friend. But I need to add this, because I asked her for more detail, and she says that she did have good friends in her life. However, there have been some health issues that have seemed to wear on her friendships. They have slowly faded away, and it has been rather isolating.
Oh, that's so sad. I would say that if you can find even a couple of friends, that you don't have to have a bunch of friends, but just a couple of friends, one or two or three at the most, are really all that you can invest in an authentic way. And so
So not Facebook friends.
No, not Facebook friends. But even if she may have, a lot of her friends may have fallen away and kind of disappeared, and maybe that's just kind of the ones that weren't really her friends after all. And if even one or two have hung in there, I think that's really all we really are capable of nurturing. And if all of them have fallen away, then we certainly pray that that the Lord will send at least one or two.
All right. Friendship for Grown-Ups. Lisa's book is available at bookstores nationwide. Lisa, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah. All right.
You.
When we come back, we've received your question. Juan Wass, I've been struggling with drugs and alcohol. Does God think I'm a lost case? Well, we'll be answering that and more right after this.